real stories, from sun-soaked SoCal to the streets of the Bay. Expect McKenna to dive deep with people, shaking things up, real activists fighting for change, and everyday locals living California's wild, unfiltered dreams. No scripts, no fluff, just bold conversations and true stories that capture the chaos and heart of this iconic state. This is California Unfiltered. Hit play and let's get started.
All right, well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. As you can see, we have a wonderful and lovely guest with us tonight. But before we get started and I introduce him, I just have a couple announcements for you guys. Uh, Home Tribe Con has officially been canceled as of today, unfortunately. I got an email today about some people were getting some really serious death threats. So they canceled that. So next week will not be happening until further notice. And again, Mondays, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That is our new recording time, or live time, I should say. But without further ado, let me introduce our wonderful guest. Here is on the screen. It's Steve Abramowicz with us. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. How are you today?
Good, good. So you are part of the Remind Me Your Journal, right?
Heartland
Remember the
Journal.
name? Okay, so tell me about that and what you do.
Heartland Journal is a website and e-newsletter that goes out every day that's dedicated to all the news the mainstream media doesn't cover. So the heartland of America news like the Wyoming fires or the Hurricane Helene in North Carolina, things that if you tune into CNN at night, you may never even know happened. So that's what we do. We try to focus on that. I write a column every Friday, trying to do some deep dives into the news that I think is very important that, again, they just don't seem to want to tell you.
And are you located in California or are you on the East Coast?
I'm from California. I spent 20
Okay.
years in Seattle, but I am in Nashville now.
Okay, wonderful. I heard Nashville's very nice. A friend of ours, actually, a good family friend of ours, had a business here in Carlsbad, San Diego area, and they just moved out to Tennessee area. So hopefully they're doing well with their restaurant out there. But
A
you've
lot
written
of
a lot
folks have left
about,
California for Tennessee.
yeah.
You bet. Yeah.
Well, in Arizona too, and Texas. And so I was in Arizona for a little bit too. So I know kind of like, oh, looks like we lost him. Oh gosh. Okay, well, until he comes back, he is part of the Heartland Journal. He is a writer. So until he comes back, I just want to remind everybody that the Home Tribe Con has been canceled, unfortunately, due to some death threats that some people were getting. But other than that, Sleep Two Free Minds, thank you for joining us tonight. You are back. It looks
I'm
like we
back.
lost you.
I don't know what that was about, but sorry. Hopefully it doesn't happen again.
No worries. I think it was like on our sixth episode or something like that. Our guest was like dropping in and out the entire time. So hopefully that doesn't happen. It was actually kind of funny, but let's go ahead and move on. So let's talk about the West Coast Antifa. You've done some stories on that. Can you kind of talk about that?
I have Jonathan Cho and Katie Davis Court and Brandy Cruz are some friends of mine, and they were just in the White House making the case that Antifa is actually not only a domestic terror organization like Donald Trump has announced, but actually an international. And this is a really big deal because actually they come out of 1940s Germany. So one little secret that most folks don't know that they were able to alert Donald Trump to, that they can then send the FBI out on, is that it's actually the craziest part of the story. $100 million in taxpayer money has gone to Antifa groups, along with millions from private enterprise like Arabella, Tide, Soros, and Weiss. Weiss is a Swedish billionaire who decides to spend his money on things like chaos in the streets of Portland than, I don't know, feeding the hungry or creating the next big Netflix. But that's the facts. Is Antifa has been underestimated for a long, long time, but all of a sudden in 2025, they've finally gotten their headlines that this is a very dangerous, very serious group that needs to be paid attention to.
So I personally don't know a lot about Antifa. for the most part, know it kind of started in 2020 with George Floyd and the BLM. Does it go back further than that?
It does. It actually takes its roots in the Communist Party of Germany that was very instrumental in trying to stop the rise of the Nazis, sort of a socialist versus a Nazi group. And then they just splintered off into many different reasons to exist ever since in the last 80
Hmm.
years. And they found their way to Portland, Seattle, Los Angeles, Michigan, including Dearborn, Michigan, just grabbing into any cause that you can imagine, even such things as gays for Palestine or save the turtles. Anytime there's which I saw with the World Trade Organization, so I'm not just making that up. They literally will foment chaos any which way they can, like the shock troops, part of a progressive leftist activist rally or march. They will go there to cause trouble.
Hmm.
And as a matter of fact, the author of the handbook, which you can see prominently displayed around 2020 with Ellison, I believe his name is, the Attorney General for Michigan. His name is Mark Bray. He has actually, there's about 61 Antifa leaders in 17 countries that have written for his Antifa, the anti-fascist handbook, but he has
Oh,
fled to Europe because he doesn't feel safe in America anymore.
wow. That's crazy to me. So, from what I kind of understand about it too, it's kind of backed by the Liberal Democratic Party, is it not?
Well, yeah, most people with liberal causes, the Tides Foundation has done that, but there are rumors that both George Clooney and Tom Hanks are both listed
Hmm.
as major donors to the organization. So they have been known to back leftist Democrat causes, including candidates in the past, like Joe Biden. Uh, George Clooney came out in favor of Joe Biden, but um, and that is documented. So money is fungible. It can go to a lot of things. You can give it to a cause that you think is, very noble, like the Save the Whales. But if it ends up in the hands of Antifa to buy shields and bear mace or batons that they use, and that's why Katie Davis Court has a black eye right now because she was covering Portland and they attacked her.
Mm.
Um, that's how it all works out. So these are very progressive causes. You're not going to see these at Republican rallies, let's just say, unless they're there to cause trouble. But yes, they are a chaos agitated group. A lot of them are paid. A lot of them are actors, crisis actors, so that you'll see them screaming and yelling on the screen. Police brutality. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. When in reality, they were throwing
Hmm.
things at ice, and so they maybe got maced or got hit with a pellet. It is quite dangerous, and there have been deaths. So it's not as if it's just fun and games out there.
Right, and the whole difference is too. You see how we reacted to Charlie Kirk versus how the other side reacted to George Floyd. It's night and day, pretty much. Um,
Oh, night
but
and day, yeah.
how? Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, how has Antifa really kind of? I guess I know through organizations like you were talking about and like outreaches, but from what I understand, our youth, the younger generation, is really kind of under attack in a sense. I mean, are they kind of going after them? Is that their target? What's their like, from your perspective, their kind of main goal?
Well, their main goal is always chaos. Like I said,
Hmm.
they're in all 50 states. So when you see Teslas being burned, or if you see the New York City Antifa, um, they don't get charged for crime. So they're really just the shock troops of the progressive. I don't want to say this is Democrats because I can't tell you that Nancy Pelosi or Bernie Sanders wrote them checks, but I can tell you that progressive causes and a lot of NGOs use them to bust them in and let them cause havoc. So I don't want people to forget that the BLM Antifa came together in Portland during 2020. Elderly woman from the neighborhood came out and was yelling at the rioters. And the Portland police said, "Forget it. The East Precinct, we're not going to deal with it," which gave them all the room that they needed. And so they threw paint on her and spit on her and put in her eyes and threatened her and put your mask on is what they were yelling about, but they didn't really care about masks. But they're wearing their
Hmm.
black bike helmets and their black outfits and their masks, so they're hiding. And the police, unfortunately, have thrown in the towel for the most part, from what I can tell. Both Seattle, Los Angeles, Portland, a lot of other places, they don't arrest them. And what happened this week is that some of the reporters who were defending themselves were basically picked up off the ground and arrested for agitating them, making them the victims, even though the victim was on the ground and were reporters doing their job. So it's become a very quasi leftist government, especially in a place like Portland, that's very radical, even though the last mayor of Portland got tear gassed out there with them. He had lasers shined in his apartment, so he was forced to move because the neighbors of the HOA couldn't take it anymore. I mean, this is the mayor, Ted Wheeler of Portland, who they turned on him, so to speak. So they're just, it's like Winston Churchill said, they just hope the alligator eats them last. But there are actual instances of a lot of property damage, a lot of violence, a lot of pain and suffering, and especially the way they treat journalists like my friend Jonathan Cho. They've chased him with a machete, threatened to beat him up. I mean, Cam Higbee is another one that recently was attacked on campus because if you remember the pro-Palestinian summer where they were all taking advantage of UCLA and University of Washington and causing lots and lots of millions of dollars of damage, and some of these administrators have lost their jobs for it. To your point about Charlie Kirk, they were the ones out there in the streets screaming to shut them down for their free speech. And that all started with Ann Coulter and Milo, I forget how to say his last name, about 10 years ago. So this has been going on quite a while, and that's why they feel so emboldened to get away with it. And so when they finally started seeing some arrests this month, you could see the shock on their face because they had been left alone to do their worst for so long, like a scene out of The Warriors or, some crazy movie from the 80s where it was, science fiction. But these are real life people with, I guess, no jobs because they can go out there and do this 24 hours a day.
So is there like a connection with the anti-ICE protest maybe? Because I was just, while you were talking about that, I was kind of thinking about what was happening over this past couple of months where we had these huge like anti-ICE riots in LA and New York and all these other cities. I feel like there's maybe a connection with that. Is there not?
100%, yes. So Andy No, who also was beat and thrown a cement milkshake at his head and like had brain bleed and is literally, handicapped now. He was at the White House with this group of citizen journalists, let's just call it, with cell phones and editing materials, telling them that this is a violent, he feared for his life, and that they are getting funds from the communist groups all over the world. So not just, Portland local. So to your question of ICE, they absolutely have globbed onto that most recent to be out there when they protest ICE, maybe legitimate people who have a right to be here and shouldn't be arrested, whatever. They come out, maybe 10% of the crowd, and start throwing things, harassing ICE. They've surrounded the ICE detention center in Portland, Oregon for 110 days, causing nothing but, sheer terror for the citizens who actually live there. And not allowing ICE to come and go as they need to do their job. When Kristi Noem was there recently, they wouldn't even let her in to use the restroom. So it's just a real chaos company that is, what can I say? It's causing just havoc in America. It's good that Trump said that they should be domestic terrorists because they are, and they have been for a long time.
Definitely.
It's been a long time coming, but Biden administration was not going to do anything. So they had 4 free years to run rampant. And they almost tried to burn down a federal courthouse in Portland with people inside, and still were not arrested for any length of time. They were booked and released immediately.
That's wild to me. Oh my gosh. Also, I want to mention, feel free to interact with the comments that you see on the screen too. If you see a comment, you want to make note of that, feel free to answer those as well.
Yeah. And that person right there, by the way, is absolutely right. The officers don't have the support from leadership, but it's worse than that. The current police chief has a DEI company on the side that he obviously is very interested in that type of politics, let's just say. And so as the chief of police, he's the one who's been saying, stand down, don't arrest, which means when the National Guard is there, they have to do all the work of what the police department should have been doing for 10 or 15 years. So Absolutely. And of course, the governor of the state of Oregon and the mayor of the state of Oregon, Kotek, they don't care at all. They'll come out in the day and say, look how beautiful Portland is with the sun shining, but they are nowhere to be seen at night when the fireworks go
Hmm.
off.
Hmm. It's so unfortunate that we've gotten to this point where Trump has had us send, the National Guard to do the police officers' work because our police officers in our departments are so, I guess, not really impacted, but we don't have enough officers to do everything. And I know a lot of Democrats, maybe even Gavin Newsom's kind of say it that, oh, we're weaponizing our military, but in reality, we're just trying to clean up the mess that was left by the previous president.
Well, I want to blame the president and say it's one man, but it's really not. This is a local thing. And so when I was in Seattle and we were
Right.
covering this in the early days of what was going on, what you saw was the city councils were looking at the budgets and they were defunding the police. That's now a common phrase, but that's where that was invented. And they really did take the money that was needed for pensions and health care for our first responders, police, and
Hmm.
moved it over to the social side so that when it came down to law and order to arrest these people and actually prosecute them and give them jail sentences, there's no money for that. So it's become a situation where today the money that
Hmm.
the state of Oregon is going to spend more money this year for illegal healthcare than on their entire police department by a factor of like two. So it's upside down, right? It's sort of like we're paying more interest on the federal debt than we are on the military, but it's the same thing at the local level as well. They're spending more on illegal aliens that Antifa is there to cause havoc about. And of course, the
Hmm.
settlements for all the abuse at schools, but that's a different story, than they are on their police. So the defunding the police movement has really had a terrible, terrible effect since George Floyd throughout the country, especially where Antifa is the most active, which is the blue cities. Chicago, the mayor is saying we're not going to let you, enforce your illegal immigration policies, even though it's America's policy. Same thing in Dallas. Same thing in Seattle, Los Angeles, San Diego. It's become a blue city chronic disease to let these folks behave like this, and they just get more and more. And a lot of them come out of the teachers union, believe it or not. So what they weren't advocating for the teachers during COVID, they were advocating for in the streets over whatever. And your question about what do they want? They don't want anything. They just want to be able to wreak havoc all night long. It's like a big party.
That's,
Chaos is their goal. Exactly what Latino Free Mind said. Chaos is their goal, and they're winning. That's the
it's
tragedy. They're winning because even though Trump has named them a domestic
fortunate.
terrorism, nobody's shooting them. I mean, what do you do with a
Well, yeah,
domestic terrorist? They don't even arrest them long term,
yeah.
and then they have a
And then
bail
Karina,
fund.
yeah. Oh my gosh, I know Karina Powers just asked, how much is it costing taxpayers?
Depends on what you mean by taxpayers. If you're in a state and you have an income tax, you're paying a lot. Like I just said, what's happening in Portland, they're paying more for illegal aliens' health care than they are for the police department. If you are in America, you are definitely paying for it because, well, how much did it cost to rebuild those statues they tore down, or to fix the parks that they destroyed while they were protesting this, that, or the other thing, or to have the National Guard come to DC? How much does that cost per hour,
Hmm.
per day? So it's costing a fortune that really doesn't need to be spent if they would just arrest these people. But it's a state's issue, right? We don't have the
Right.
army. The army's not going to go, I hope, not going to go into Colorado and fix Denver. But the National Guard
Hmm.
is who we're using at the moment. And Texas allowed their National Guard to go to Portland. They shouldn't have to do that. There's a cost to that. So Texas taxpayers are paying for that, some which out of the general fund.
Yeah, and then I know Gio also had to mention, is the chief of police getting paid from these groups? I think he's talking about the one in Oregon.
Well, somebody would have to do forensic accounting to see. No, but here's an interesting story. So the one of the judges in where was this, North Carolina, who had let out a lot of violent criminals, and that we saw, killed the gal on the subway right before Charlie Kirk was shot.
Hmm.
If you remember that, the Ukrainian refugee, she
Yes.
has a halfway house. So she had economic gain by letting that person and others like him or her stay in her facilities as opposed to go to jail. So could it have been greed that had him free to commit that crime? It's very possible. So when you look at the Portland police officer, all we know is the public that he told his troopers to stand down and not make arrests. Whether he got economic incentive for that or if it's just his political ideology, I don't know yet.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's going to need to know because there is a lot of that. There is a lot of graft, but I have not yet seen a specific instance where a politician. Now, here's an interesting thing. The last mayor's race that has the current mayor there, her opponent was an Antifa member. So
Wow.
had that lady won, we would have had a direct politician, not only ideologically connected to Antifa, but actually a member of it. So, and it's only a step away because this is happening in New York City now too, where we have somebody who's a chaos agent about to be mayor of
Mm-hmm.
our largest city. That happens to be a religious version, but a lot of outside of the country money. So that's the age-old question. You follow the money, you'll probably find it, but I have not yet seen it for the Portland police chief yet.
Wow. Oh my gosh, that's crazy that they had a connection to Antifa. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. That makes me have a
It
question about all of
It
our other
runs the state.
politicians.
It runs the state. Well, there are other states that are in Florida. I wouldn't say this is the issue, but in Portland,
Yeah.
Oregon, and in Seattle, Washington, not the state of Washington, but the Seattle city, I would say yes. The Antifa agents and the bike lane guys, their bike clubs that run the show, and
Mm-hmm.
that they elect politicians, they get rules changed, they make things happen in their favor, and what's most important is the DAs who were funded, some by George Soros and these other type of groups, look the other way. They're the ones that could crack down tomorrow if they said, no more, we're going to give you 30-year to life sentences if you try to kill an ICE agent or something like that. But they haven't done that. And they've also pushed back and said, we're not even going to enforce that law. That's a problem.
Mm-hmm. So what about connections to data centers? I know you've written some articles on data centers with our elections. Is there any connection with that?
Not with elections. Data centers, what I've been focusing on mostly is that they are going insane with their growth
Mm-hmm.
rate and how much water they are taking from drought-ridden areas to create them. So, water is a very important commodity. You need it to live, you need it to farm, and these data centers are so big and they use up so much water and so much electricity. They're making the areas uninhabitable where they're putting them up for the benefit of Meta and Google and Elon's XAI. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm concerned about the aquifers under this country that we use to live, to grow crops and eat that food. And so there have been I have a lot of information about it. I don't want to bore you or your customers, but like one data center, they provide enough heat to approximately 11,000 homes. And just imagine if we didn't have it for the data center, but we had it for the homes. That's a
Mm-hmm.
family. That's life. That's what we really want in this country. We don't want that, and they for some reason keep picking drought-ridden areas. So, like in Texas, there's a data center that uses 50 billion gallons of water, and they have a drought. Like, well, you
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't be. They tell you in California you can't water your lawn, but in Texas they'll let you run a data center that's really just there to store bits and bytes of people's cats dancing on TikTok. So we've got a big problem here with the supply and demand of these data centers. And even McKinsey has said they don't really see this as a viable economic boom. They're not going to make a lot of money out of these things. So we're really just creating these and giving these huge tax breaks and using up our water for maybe what will be nothing. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a problem, but there's been some pushback, and I'm glad to see that.
Geo says get more into it. So kind of go more into depth to that then.
You want more data center information? All right.
I'm interested. I'm definitely interested in this. So
Well, it's funny because I go on air and people are like, huh, I hadn't heard of that. But here's the thing. So
it's interesting.
the growth of AI, which we all
Mm-hmm.
think is a fantastic thing, right? And this new digital economy, they project it is going to increase the water consumption about double by 2030, a short 5 years away from now, double. So that $50 billion I told you about in Dallas or Texas is going to be $100 billion. Where is it going to come from? You can't make new water. I mean, it does rain, but whatever. So, and it's because they say that by 2030, companies will invest about $7 trillion in capital expenditures on data center infrastructure around the whole world. This is not just an American problem. This is everywhere. And ironically enough, in Qatar, which doesn't even have any water, it's desert. So the question is, why? What are we going to do with all this? For the, when you do a search on chatbot, it uses energy, and you need that energy to cool down the center so they don't fry all the circuits. Well, that water is needed for consumption. So Qatar has 11 data centers. They promised Trump $3 billion to finance more here in the United States. So it sounds good on paper, great, but what's that $3 billion going to do? For example, there's one large data center that can do as much as tens of thousands of homes with the facilities like for 100 megawatts or more, which is enough to power about 80,000 US homes. That's just one data center. I can get into where it is and what it does if they want, but here's an example. So the largest data center in the whole country is currently under construction in Texas, Abilene, Texas. The project's called Project Stargate,
Right.
And that's OpenAI. So I think that's Microsoft. No, I forget.
I thought that was under Elon, was it not?
Yeah, I think it is. So that's the world's largest when it's all done. It's going to have roughly 8 million square feet. So other big ones, Amazon has an India campus for AI work, the Citadel campus in Nevada, obviously drought-ridden Nevada, QTS's Atlanta facility, Atlanta where people live. So OpenAI, the one I mentioned, is a $500 billion project they call Stargate. And Amazon is building a data center campus, I said, in India, 2.2 gigawatts of electricity. That's a lot. And that Citadel one is operated by Switch. The campus has the world's largest coalition data center in Tahoe, Reno. One was being 1.4 million square feet. And that's Atlanta. And then a 970,000 square foot facility on a 95 acre campus. It's the one of the largest in the world, but residents near a proposed 634 acre data center in Jones County oppose the project, and Monroe County Board unanimously rejects the rezoning of land for a $6 billion data center, halting the development amid local concerns. So those are two in Georgia that have finally said no more. We can't do it. We can't do it. And by the way, if you're anywhere near it, you hear the buzz, so you can't sleep at night. There's this blue light that it constantly gives off, so you close your eyes, you still see it. Like, you cannot live next to these things. They're just not compatible with humanity.
Would you say they're kind of dangerous to society?
If the water's gone, we're going to look like the surface of the moon. There aren't any people living on the moon that I know. So yeah, that's how bad it could be. And I live in Memphis. I live near Memphis. Memphis has this thing called the Spartan Aquifer, which is like the oldest, purest water on earth, that it feeds Nashville, and across the way is Arkansas. And so the Arkansas has these multiple data centers that are tapping that water, which contaminates it, makes it undrinkable, but it's, because it's dirty. And that's a $4 billion west of Memphis. And other significant data center activity includes a planned $1 billion facility in Little Rock and Conway areas by somebody. There's always a mystery developer. They don't tell the city who it is, although it's usually Meta or XAI or Microsoft. And they want to use these facilities. So again, why do we need 1,000 acres here and 1,000 acres there just for storage of data, when that data is do we really, my cell phone's pretty active. I don't really need that much. When I run out of room, I just delete some videos and pictures. This is like multiplied by 1 million. So now there's an argument to be made like, oh, well, this is jobs. We need jobs locally. Well, so they have increased 20% nationwide, but that's mostly for construction. Once the construction's gone, it only takes like 10 to 50 people to even run the things. So the jobs that they have right now in construction will disappear, and we'll have these massive data centers using massive electricity and massive amounts of water for no real job gains in these cities and counties that are thinking that it's great boom for business. Not so.
Mhm. What about like over the next 5 years? Is there even an environmentally safe way to go about these data centers? I mean, what is the, I guess, impact within the next 5 years?
Well, so exactly 5 years from now, they say that the by 2030, companies will invest about 7 trillion. So what you're seeing is that these cities and counties that rely on taxes and jobs for their own revenue are very anxious to get it. But like I said,
Mhm.
once the job is done, how long does it take to build? 1, 2, maybe 3 years. They're gone, and then you're stuck with this big box that's drinking up all your water. So they're going to have to either explore for more water, or they're going to end up shutting these things down and then losing that investment if the city paid for it. And that's one of the big problems that I've had for it, is that states are forfeiting hundreds of millions of dollars in tax revenue just to entice these folks to come in there, the tech companies. So if they want to get to 1 trillion by 2027, according to Professional Services Network, CNBC actually said 42 states provide full or partial sales tax exemptions to data centers, or have no state sales tax at all. Meaning that if they buy something to put into their thing, like copper or electronics or whatever, light switches, they don't pay sales tax on it. So the city doesn't even generate that, just so desperate for these jobs that I don't think they're going to get. 16 of those states have granted nearly $6 billion exemptions over the past 5 years. So what's going to happen is they're going to do business. That state in the next 5 years, like you said, is not going to receive any of the revenue that they anticipate to get out of this. Only Illinois, Nevada, Missouri, and Washington itemize how much companies are getting, by the way. This is kind of a big secret. So CNBC found that one Microsoft data center in Illinois received more than $38 million in data center sales tax exemptions, but created just 20 permanent jobs. So that's my point right there. In Washington, where I come from, the tech giant Microsoft secured $333 million in sales tax exemptions for its data center between 2015 and 2023. So this isn't even future looking. This is how they do it. And of course, the politicians get to say, look, we created jobs. We created jobs. They're just not very good jobs for a long term.
Right, right.
Oh,
And do you
and
have,
then the answer to your question about how do you prevent this environmentally, they have this thing called carbon capture. So as these
yes.
things
Yeah.
create their ozone depleting, and that's kind of funny. Like, where's Greta Thunberg and all the rest of the greenies saying, why don't they, save the turtles? How can we have solar panels if they're going to fry the tortoises in the desert? Well, carbon capture is even worse. About 2.5 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide are emitted globally by 2030 is what they expect. So Susan Sarandon can
Hmm.
get all upset, but what they're trying to do is capture it in these pipelines and store it underground, which, gosh, I hope you don't drop a match or whatever. I don't even know if it's flammable, but Chevron loves that, because before you can
Hmm.
store the CO2, you have to capture it. So some companies are getting into that in a big way. There's liquefied natural gas, of course, that they take the CO2 out of it so that it becomes liquefied, and they want to repackage that and sell it. So there's a big environmental push right now in North Dakota for exactly that. Minnesota, Nebraska, North Dakota, and South Dakota, they want to store it underground permanently. So all of a sudden, the Earth is going to become like the Hindenburg. We're going to pump our CO2
Hmm.
into the Earth.
Hmm.
It's certainly not good for farms. So another one and that's estimated to cost like $8.9 billion to South Dakota for a 2,500-mile pipeline. So money just goes flying out of these things. It's so ridiculous. I've done stories on how much money they shoveled out the door the last month of the Biden administration, from the energy department into all these green ideas that have completely not generated, like Solyndra that went out of business, or A123. It's been quite the boondoggle. It's really gross, actually. And again, the ramifications are short-term profit, maybe a good thing for a city in 2025 for these jobs, but come 2035, you don't have the jobs anymore, you don't have the tax revenue, and you don't have the water to drink, so the farmers are gone. What are we doing?
Right.
We'll have cat videos, but we won't have farmers. Bad trade, bad trade.
I'd rather have the farmers than cat videos. I'm more of a dog person anyways, so
Absolutely. Well, your dog won't have
uh,
anything to drink or eat. Yeah, I know.
exactly. But to answer Gio's question real quick, he says, "What is the middle ground? We're advancing technology at such an exponential pace. We need the infrastructure. At the same time, we need the resources for humanity. How do we balance that?"
Well, if you agree with me, and everybody has their own opinion, I don't think we need all of this gigabytes of data storage on this planet. I mean, go put it on the moon if you want and use Wi-Fi to connect it, because I really just think that the water was God's gift to us so that we could actually create cities. And if we start using it just to cool down the machines, then humanity doesn't have a reason to be, right? And the people, it's like the old Ford, when Henry Ford was making his cars, he's like, well, I have to make them affordable so people will actually buy them. If I just start making Maseratis and nobody can afford a $100,000 car, then what good am I?
Mhm.
So this, back then there wasn't a lot of people with that 100,000, so Maserati could come around later. But in the meantime, the point is that if we have America, like Jefferson wanted, egalitarian, where you could have a farmer who could grow a crop and take it to market and it's economical to transport it. That's a problem with high gas prices. But to do that, and we can have people eat and they can live in cities and they can work on Wall Street and they can do whatever they want to do for a living and raise a family, that's fantastic. Put them in a school, learn about, the reading, writing, and arithmetic. But if you take all that away because the city is uninhabitable now, we got a big problem. And so the balance to me is stop the madness. Don't do this. Donald Trump has said it's a race. It's a data center race. We have to beat China. Well, we've got about 5,000 of them. China's got about 50. So
Mhm.
if it's a race, we've already lapped them 10 times. We don't really have to be in a race. But
Right.
again, it's the storage of data. It's like your cell phone. It's like your Spotify playlist. Why do we need trillions and trillions of gigabytes of hot, needing to be cooled down things unless we're going to start flying space shuttles all over, from here to Mars on a regular basis? We just don't have the demand for what they're supplying. It's almost like the railroads. If you remember the stories of the railroads, everyone went bankrupt who started trying to connect the east to the west to the railroads, but we ended up buying them for cents on the dollar to actually start charging people to transport the goods on the railroads. That was the real business model, not the construction of them, the use of them. Well, the same thing here. The construction of these data things is not really where the value is. It'll be the storage of them, but it'll be like the early days of broadband. They created these huge pipes, but there wasn't enough demand through them to make them economic. So Broadcom went bankrupt. I foresee that happening here with these as well. But these tech giants who are in this game have a lot of money to burn. So they may be thinking very short sighted for humanity's sake long term. Not to bum you out. I think I lost my sound somehow. I don't hear you. I see you. Can you hear me? I think I should go out and come back in. What do you think?
We are 39 minutes in. I am so sorry about the tech issues, guys. We are having another episode with tech issues, Gio. Can you guys hear me okay?
Hello.
Steve back to the scene.
Sorry about that. I've never seen that before, but here I am.
They were listening to our podcast. They didn't like what we were talking about the truth.
Uh-oh. Yeah, it's possible. China. I didn't even mention China.
But it's so true what we're talking about. We've become so dependent on technology and now AI. And I don't know if you know where Valley Center is, but they were putting up, I think, I don't know how much acres it was, but several acres, I believe, of solar panels to have these solar panels in the middle of this kind of residential area. And people are like, no, this is like taking up land for more people to come. And it mind boggles me how we're becoming more and more dependent on the technology of everything.
And it doesn't work. I mean, when solar panels first came on the scene, they put them on people's roofs, and then if a building caught on fire, the fire department couldn't come in from the top because they would fry. So then they put them out in the desert, and then they realized, oh, I didn't understand that if a hailstorm came along, especially if they geoengineer like the bigger hail balls that we may have seen lately. Some people believe that's true, some people don't. I don't care. But hail has wiped out millions and millions of dollars in Wyoming's worth of solar panels. So it's stupid. That's just not the way God intended it. Windmills don't work. You saw in Texas, they froze and they fall down. They cut up the eagles, and everybody loves the eagles, but they do get their heads cut off in those stupid propellers. And then, of course, there's hydro, and then Washington State, they want to blow up those dams, and because the salmon needs to be able to be more proficient, although salmon has been going up even with them. So that argument is kind of silly. You have to say, like, well, what's the ulterior motive? Yeah, all of the Green New Deal ideas don't really seem to pay off and as good as. And here's the funniest thing ever. So I've been following this for 20 years. When they first came around with electric cars, everybody felt really good about their Prius. And they were saying, oh, I'm a virtue signaling person. I have a Prius. I'm not using foreign oil. Good for me. And I always said, like, well, when you plug it in to charge it, how do you do that? Oh, I use the electricity at home. How's your home's electricity get to you? Oh, coal-fired power plant about 100 miles away. Oh, so you're burning more coal than ever before because you're not using oil in your car. Interesting. So the whole Greta Thunberg Save the Whales sea turtle thing usually blows up really quick when you start talking about the Green New Deal, which is really just a change of the economy to some other feel good virtue signaling, very expensive. And by the way, those lithium batteries do not degrade. You can't stick them in a landfill and hope that the world's going to, be clean ever after. They're all sent off in cargo ships to Marrakesh. So those unfortunate people have to deal with it. We don't. But folks in LA and Hollywood can feel real good about their hybrid SUVs.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the EV or the Teslas. Sorry, Elon Musk, but I'm not a fan of the Teslas or the electric cars. I drive a Mustang, so I'm all for gas powered cars.
Cool.
So I'm like, I need to get there fast. That's my whole thing about it.
There's a hybrid Mustang now. I don't know if you know that.
It's not a real Mustang to me, though.
Yeah. Well, and I'm all for all of the above. I mean, if you want to have options and you want your I had a plug-in BMW once. I mean, I saved on gas. That's cool. I don't have a new one now, but the point is that just like with like vaccines, it's like everyone was freaking out that Trump had a booster yesterday or the day before. It's like it was never about whether you could have it or not. It was whether it should be mandated or not. That was not American. Just like if you mandate electric cars, you must drive an Elon Musk electric car. No good. I don't care if he's conservative or not. That's not good. Mandates are bad in America where you're free. That's what they do in North Korea. They say you must do this. You must say that. We don't like that. And so that's what we've saw in recent history is that you must have a data center in your neighborhood because the city council said that you would, and at the same time you can't water your lawn or feed your dog or water your crops. That's not good. We don't want that. That's not what America is all about.
Yeah, I know California had a lot of a lot of mandates in recent years with the droughts. You can't do your water at a certain time. And then I think, not last year, but I think maybe the year before it was, Gavin Newsom put out, I guess, a mandate or whatever you want to call it to not drive your cars at certain times and to take, public transportation. He put out some initiative about that.
See, he's the worst. I think he's smarter than he is acting, because they didn't fill the reservoirs with water, and when they had a record amount of rain, they flushed it all out into the ocean as if that was some sort of environmental virtuous thing to be doing, as opposed to store that water so they could feed the crops in the Central Valley, or they could fill the reservoirs to avoid fires like in Pacific Palisades. Yet he didn't do that. So when he tells you or anyone else you cannot water your lawn, but you got Tom Selleck, I don't know if you remember that story, but he's watering his lawn all day long, and gets in trouble for it a little bit, but he's still Tom Selleck. He didn't go to jail or anything. Yeah. But they flush all that water into the ocean because of the delta smelt. It just goes to show you that they don't really care. Now, you can get down into the weeds. There's one family that owns most of the water in California, and they get to decide what the price is. So if they wanted to say, we're going to make a scarcity that will make our prices higher, supply and demand, you'll do it. And now we're getting into something, a little bit more nefarious than just, bad economic policy or bad environmental policy. But they don't clear cut the trees, so they get the forest fires. Usually it's arson, but constantly happening. Burned down a whole city, Pacific Palisades, and they could have prevented that if they would have just filled the reservoir with water, but they didn't. Including the hydrants didn't have water. So Gavin Newsom is probably the worst person to ask how environmental policy and city management should go. He did the same thing in San Francisco too when he was mayor. Yeah. Somebody keeps saying China, China, China. What do they want to know about China? China's the.
What do you mean?
Well, with Trump in charge, China's been on their heels. So things that happened in the last 4 years under Biden, China was, on the march, and they were getting discounts on just about everything that they'd ever want. Now we're doing things here at home, including energy, rare earth minerals that go into things, lithium, things like that. But we're behind. And so there's a lot of environmental problems with that, because where are you going to find lithium mines that we can operate real fast in order to meet the demand for the next iPhone? That's a problem. We still have to work with China, but it's never a pleasant experience, because they play hardball. They want to make sure that their prices are usurious. And then, of course, the tariffs, and Trump's threatening another 100% tariff on there. They can't like that back at home. It's the same with a lot of other countries, but he has been a genius in coming up with this that nobody else had for so very long. We used to run this country on tariffs. There were no income taxes. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping that in his 4 years, we're also going to see a massive, if not elimination of the income tax to offset the tariffs, and let this country run by a lot bigger dollar amount, which is the tariffs, because we make it. We don't pay taxes when we make it. We sell it internationally. The country gets money that we can use for our defense. We'll see. We'll see if the Republicans in the Senate and the Congress will let him have that plan B of the policy. But in the meantime, he's forced folks to manufacture here at home instead of elsewhere, and then send it back in at the high rate because of the tariff. So prior to that, everybody was the pharmaceutical companies were leaving for Ireland, Vietnam, anywhere else they could do it cheaper. Nike was in Vietnam and Cambodia, and of course China. That changed. He changed that equation by saying, you know what, it's going to be cheaper to do it here than in Mexico. So why don't you, Ford, come back home in the South where there's no unions? And that's exactly what we've seen.
So while we're kind of on the topic of China here, I know, as everyone seems to know, Newsom has connections with Xi Jinping. I mean, he cleaned up San Francisco just for him. I mean, personally, if we can do that for president of another country, we can do it for, general purposes. So kind of talk about, I mean, if you know anything, that is, that relationship.
I know more than I wish I did. I lived there for 30 years. Basically, California was created by China. So China it's not as strict as Taiwan, but they basically believe that China has been, or California has been their sister state for a long, long time. And so actually you can go back even before Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was a big Hollywood star and global, and China loved him. He started giving them a lot of the access to Silicon Valley and the defense industry in the South, down there by the Harbor View and all the rest. And
Oh, no
so,
way.
for a long, long time, California and China have been working hand in hand on a lot of things that we called globalism, but it was really a lot of sweetheart deals that kept California booming and kept China booming too. And Nancy Pelosi was, in charge. Of Dianne Feinstein, longtime senator from California. They always had looked west to China, more so than I would say the middle of America or the East Coast, which they were supposed to represent Americans, but they really didn't. So China and California have been together a long time. And so when things like this, where a guy like Trump gets in their way of what they've been so used to doing, it's a lot like Antifa, actually, not in their violence, but in the way that they were given so much room to run and do things their way for so long. All of a sudden, somebody comes around and says, you can't do it that way anymore. They don't like it. And so that's why we got ourselves a little economic war. But I saw a lot of defense industry, dual use, they called it, satellite equipment and whatnot that was coming out of Lockheed Martin and the defense contractors in California, including Hollywood IP, intellectual property, and Microsoft, come to think of it, going where the market was, which was China. They weren't supposed to technically, but now they're no longer allowed to, at least not on the cheap.
That's wild to me. Like I knew there was kind of, I guess, an impact with California, but I didn't know it was such, uh, just such a dramatic impact of it.
Well,
Um,
California is the fourth largest economy in the world. If it was
right.
its own country, it would be number four. And so everyone has to do business with them, and they either do it their way or whoever their partners are. And for the last 25 years, everybody's partner has been China.
But doesn't that cause a lot of, I guess, security issues, if you will?
Oh yeah, I mean they wouldn't have a navy, they wouldn't have satellites in the air, they wouldn't have nuclear capabilities, they wouldn't have any of what they have to be quote unquote modernized since Chairman Mao has been gone. If it wasn't for America and unfortunately companies looking the other way on what are dual use things. You can use it for your TV satellite, but you can also use it for your laser guided missile satellites, right? So dual use, two uses. If we had not done that, and that goes back to Bill Clinton, even if you had not done that and we kept our own secrets, America would be way ahead of everybody else, and China would be, muddling along, doing it their own way with their own scientists, just like Russia, but not nearly as far along as they currently are. If it wasn't for their very deep connections in the University of California system, the corporations, like I said, that do this, the pharmaceuticals, everything that we do out of California, including agriculture, by the way, a lot of it goes over there. Without our help, without California's help. And that's the same thing goes for Oregon and Washington apples and Nevada and any company that is a multinational corporation. Even look at Macau, the casinos in Macau, like the Wynn. That was a Nevada-based guy, Steve Wynn, who decided, hey, there's money to be made over there too. I'll do that. The only way to do that is if China says, okay, we'll let you, because they're very closed. And same thing with J.P. Morgan. We'll only let you if we let you. And so you got to play by our rules. And they all did this. They all said, yeah, we'll play by your rules. And sometimes, in my opinion, Meta, Facebook, played by their rules more than they played by our own rules. And that's why we got the censorship, and that's why we got the shadow banning and the down throttling, and if you are conservative and you say something on Facebook, people won't even see it, because that's what they do in China. They restrict that, and they were treating us like that too. So they were playing by their rules more than they were playing by their home court rules. And that's how we got ourselves into this situation where, a president could be banned from Twitter for 4 years.
Oh my gosh. I saw a map kind of showing the land in the US that China essentially owns. And correct me if I'm wrong, the majority of it was near military bases, but it also in a lot of California.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, California, they used to say as California goes, so goes the country. A lot of what America has been in the 20th and 21st century so far, California was a driver on that. And that's one of the problems with like these new proposition, was it 490 something? Because that law is so draconian and so terrible for 495, AB 495, which they just signed into law. It's so
Yes.
anti-family values that you'd have to consider it like a communist law. Well, do we want the whole country to go like that? No, I don't. But if they can do it there, you can do it anywhere, so to speak. So we have to
Right.
now watch, will that roll out in Michigan and Minnesota and Nevada and other states too? And next thing you know, not only do we not have water to drink, we don't have kids that are considered families, they're considered the states. That is a very, very bad thing. What does it say right
Right.
there? That fact check was for the Newsom statement with a lot of laughing going on. What did Latino Free Minds fact check me on? I like being fact
He's
checked because
fact
that means I
checking
know.
on something.
All right.
Uh, Go ahead and put that in the comment, and we'll address that when you put that in. But you brought up AB 495, and then I also wanted to talk to you about AB 1127. I think it was. It had to do with the Glock gun ban, something like that. Both of
Oh,
those were both signed into law. I think this week or last
I
week.
mean that's straight up Second Amendment violation. It'll be
Mm-hmm.
overturned by the Supreme Court, but it'll take some time to get there. Glock is a private company. They can, we all have first, Second Amendment right to self defense. So Gavin can say that it's a virtue signal thing. He has an election. He's got his redistrict thing coming up. He's doing his darndest to just make sure that he's the leader of the farthest possible left party that they could envision. And so gun control is one of them. So why Glock and not Smith and Wesson or any of the other choices? I don't know, but he's doing what he thinks he can. The low hanging fruit. Everybody's afraid of a Glock. It sounds scary. It's been in all the movies, but the thing about 50 that is so offensive.
Mm-hmm.
I'm born and raised in California, so I came from Northern California, which is a little bit more conservative. But I did go to college in Southern California, which Orange County was a lot more conservative. But the rest of the state is pretty liberal. There are only 43 Democrats in the whole state. Or I should say there are 43 states. There are only 9 Republicans. His 50 is trying to get rid of 5 of those Republicans to make it just
Mm-hmm.
4, and one of
Yeah.
which is named Daryl Issa, who once upon a time I thought could be president. And so it's almost like a personal slap at him to try to just squeeze out the last drips and drabs of the Republicans. They can't do anything with 9 to 43. I mean, you only need, what is that, a total of 52 is my math. So you need 26 to pass anything. All the Republicans could, drive to Nevada tomorrow and they could pass everything with quorum. They don't need them. But this is just mean to say, hey, we're going to do this. And then, of course, even that isn't easy enough for him. They got to cheat. So on the envelope, you can see if you voted no, and they can just throw those away and, open the ones that they say yes. And it could be a 99% win like Saddam Hussein or something. So it's just more of this. He's a short termer. He's just trying to consolidate all the power that they possibly can. And it's gross, it's terrible, but that's what happens when you have a supermajority of either party. They just run wild with the power and they destroy the Bill of Rights and the Constitution in this case, because you cannot take people's Glocks away. That's a Second Amendment violation. It literally says shall not infringe, but you got to go into the courts for the next however long before it can ever see the light of day. Now we'll see if he does anything with Prop 13 before he leaves. That would be interesting. If he takes away the ability for counties and cities to raise property taxes, which you can't do, that's end. That's game over for California. You'll be the last person there.
Well, luckily he's on his way out, so by next year, knock
Well,
on
if
wood.
Katie Porter wins, it's worse. So she's a
Oh,
wild one. She's a wild one, and she's the front runner in California. So they can always get worse. That's what I always say. As bad as Gavin Newsom was, as bad as Gray Davis was, as bad as Arnold Schwarzenegger was, it can always get worse.
that is true. I mean, one of our top contenders, though, or rivals, I should say, rather, is Chad Bianco, who I grew up in Riverside County. Was a great sheriff when I was living there, especially during the pandemic. He pretty much said "suck it" to the governor, with the mandates and all that. So hopefully, I'm rooting for him. So hopefully, he gets into the
I
governorship.
mean, like I said, you have 9 Republicans in the whole
Yeah,
state. They're trying to make it 4. They want to get rid of 5 of them, so that leaves 4. If you have 4 Republicans in your state who can help you get elected, you can't do it statewide. It's the same thing in Washington State. There are no
yeah.
statewide elected Republicans in office, and there hasn't been since mail-in voting was initiated. So we love to believe we live in 50 states of democracy and everybody loves our constitutional republic, but there are some states like California, they bend the rules so much that they don't even make sense anymore.
Sorry, I have people racing outside my window, so hopefully that didn't catch too much on my end. But I kind of live like near a main street here, so
Do you think do
it's
you think GTO Ramirez is joking about Katie Who, because she is the front runner to be governor of California,
come
and
on, Theo.
she burned her husband with mashed potatoes over his head. She was so angry at him, burned him.
I saw the 2 videos of her outbursts on camera too, and the
But
one in the interview.
I was
Yeah,
told, that was her on her best behavior. So in behind closed doors, she's even worse. She had like huge turnover in her office. But Kamala Harris did too, who came from California,
yeah,
by the way. She was in Gavin Newsom's district attorney office in San Francisco when he was the mayor. So a lot of the times when we see California politicians rise, they're not the best.
yeah. I don't want a politician representing me when she says, "I love Venn diagrams. I just love Venn diagrams."
She's also out there saying that she lost the closest race in the 21st
Yeah,
century, which is actually a lie, because Gore versus Bush was way closer, and she actually got blown out. I think every election in the 21st century has been closer than hers, but she's running with it.
right.
She loves it.
But
That's called low information voters, people who will believe that and not look and see for themselves.
yeah. So just to kind of like tie it up here in a bow, final point, I want to touch on kind of Hollywood, because Hollywood has a huge impact too. You have actors and actresses who are obviously influencing our younger generation and just America in general. Is there, anyways, kind of a tie between politicians and then Hollywood? What are the kind of like the backdoor talks and deals going on with that?
I'm glad you asked me that question, because I started in this business. I knew Andrew Breitbart in my LA days, and he is the one who coined the phrase that politics is downstream from culture first, and then the politicians sort of figure it out. He died, and I was very, very closely watching with my own media company how they flipped it. Politicians started becoming the ones who were trying to dictate the culture. So you had AOC, who was a huge Twitter person, and you've got Elon Omar out there wearing, Prada sunglasses, and you just had a lot of people in DC all of a sudden trying to take over the mantle of the drivers of culture, and a lot of the actors and actresses got along with that. Robert De Niro, John Cusack, if you know who that is, like a lot of Susan Sarandon, I mentioned earlier, a lot of the celebrities, the older ones, the Jane Fonda types, latched onto the left, which they were always leftist, but they got really crazy during Trump. Rosie O'Donnell, like a real Trump hater. So they flipped it. Politics became upstream from culture. Well, I believe that was like holding a beach ball under the water, and it popped up back. And now we're getting back to the culture. And so with Charlie Kirk, this is what they were seeing was like, wait a minute, the young people, the kids, the hip and cool ones, the ones who like, rock and roll music and are a little bit rebellious, they started actually gravitating more towards the right and the Christian beliefs than they were in the past, when they were like the, sex, drugs, rock and roll, or the hippies, or the anti-war movement of the 60s, where Nancy Pelosi came out of in San Francisco. So they didn't like that. They freaked out. And now you're seeing that all peel apart. And so no one wants to go see a Robert De Niro movie. No one wants to see the new Rob Reiner movie. It bombed. Nobody wants to see the new De Niro movie. So I think, I haven't seen the numbers yet, but I think the new DiCaprio movie is kind of bombing. And everyone's like, well, wait, why do you keep telling us to, be greenies when you're flying all over the world in your fancy jet, whatever it does. You're a hypocrite. It doesn't compute. I don't like that. Kids don't like to be lied to. They don't like hypocrites. So I think the culture is coming back in charge of the politicians, and we're seeing what the culture really wants is revival. They want conservatism, they want, I believe, Christianity, and they don't want chaos in their streets, and so they're not joining Antifa anymore. They're actually joining Bible study at their high school. You know what I'm saying? Like it's the culture is changing, and so the movies should start reflecting that, because that's all they ever do. They're a mirror of us. They're supposed to reflect us. Fast Times at Ridgemont High was a reflection of them after Grease, and so we should start seeing more patriotic, heartland, uplifting, like Reagan, like the movie Reagan, where we have heroes instead of anti-heroes, so that people in Antifa will start looking like the idiots, and people who stay home and get good grades and go get good jobs and raise a family look like the geniuses and the heroes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they have such a huge influence. Like Taylor Swift is also one of the other ones that also has a huge influence on younger generations. So
I think her and Beyonce, they may have jumped the shark. I can't be 100% sure. She just came out with a recent album. She also did great blockbuster numbers with this movie release. And I get that, but you can't do that over and over and over again. Even Michael Jackson, was kind of, hey, he passed away, but he was peaking. And so I can't be sure. I don't know if these Swifties are going to be, into her when she's as old as Dolly Parton. But they are going to get older. They are going to get jobs. They are going to look at their pay stubs and say, dang, I pay a lot of taxes. I may want to vote Republican. They should gradually wake up and say, okay, the party's over. It's time to actually be patriotic and care about this country because I live here, versus I live in a la la land and I want to go out at night and burn federal buildings with these Antifa guys all dressed in black because that's where the cool kids are not anymore.
Well, no one can replace Dolly Parton. So I love Dolly Parton, but
she's older than Taylor Swift by quite a bit.
Yeah.
And, she had her day. She had her day.
That's true. Hey, I'm 24, so I like my old country and my classic rock. So, but I would love to continue this conversation. So I would love to have you back on. But for now, until then, where can people find you and learn more about you?
Oh, yeah. Go to heartlandjournal.com. We have a newsletter every day that covers the news. The mainstream won't, like I said. And my podcast is Heartland Journal Podcast. And so every time there's a new one, it's also in the newsletter. But you can see the whole library at heartlandjournal.com under the podcast tab. And that's where the entire library, we're having our 400th episode Wednesday live. You can see that on Rumble, YouTube, Play TV, Spotify, iTunes, anywhere you get your podcasts. And I really love that show. It's always an interesting guest making a positive change in our community. We talk about really anything that interests me when I invite them on. I've had actors and actresses and writers, authors, politicians. Yeah, all over the place. 400 different guests so far. So, and we're booked out quite a ways, so there'll be a lot more. So yeah, check that out, heartlandjournal.com. You can subscribe. We just need your email address, and then boom, you get it in your inbox every day, and it'll be news that you will not see on NBC, ABC, CBS, or CNN.
Awesome. Well, I have so many more questions for you, so I hope you come back on so I can ask those questions of you. But thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on tonight and taking that time.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Good night.